Good afternoon. I'm Michael Friedman, the 113th President of the National Press Club. In 2012, Austin Tice, a U.S. Marine veteran who was studying law at Georgetown University, set out for Syria. He had become skilled as a photographer and was determined to help tell the story of the humanitarian crisis unfolding in that country. Austin is a freelance journalist working for McClatchy, The Washington Post, and CBS News. He was asked by those news organizations to write stories as well as shoot photos. He used his Marine training to plan his travel, interpret what he was seeing, and keep himself safe. On this day, 8 years ago, August 14th, 2012, Austin was taken while working in Syria. 8 years, the longest amount of time any U.S. journalist has been held, including Terry Anderson of the Associated Press, who was held in Lebanon for 2,454 days between 1985 and 1991. While we press for and await the day that Austin walks free and is reunited with his family, we can look back on the last year and find some reasons for hope that his freedom is coming. Since this time last year, we conducted a national night out for Austin Tice that introduced his case to thousands of people at restaurants across the country and to millions more through social media, national advertising, local news stories, and ultimately a segment on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt on World Press Freedom Day. Night Out led to a September 2019 project called Ask About Austin, led by the National Press Club Journalism Institute, in which volunteers fanned out across Capitol Hill for meetings with officials in all 535 congressional offices. Ultimately, 173 U.S. senators and members of Congress signed on to a letter calling on President Trump to prioritize Austin's freedom. In January of this year, Austin's mom, Deborah Tice, came to Washington from her home in Texas. She announced at a news conference here at the National Press Club that the message had resonated with the president and he was speaking internally about the need to get Austin released. She also asserted that there was a high-ranking government official actively working to keep the president from having the dialogue with Syria that was given as a requirement for Austin to be set free. Then on March 9th of this year, President Trump entered the White House briefing room to discuss the coronavirus pandemic. Instead, with the world watching, he spoke publicly about Austin's case for the first time. The president said he had sent a letter to President Assad of Syria asking for his help in getting Austin released. As you may know, the president and Secretary of State Pompeo have issued new statements today, and we're all appreciative of those statements. But only Austin's parents, Mark and Deborah Tice, who are with us virtually today, know what has happened since that time, and we will hear from them momentarily. What we all know today is that members of both parties in Congress and the President of the United States have come together in a unified call for Austin's release. And yet, we're gathered again, just as we've come together for the last 8 years, on a hot summer's day in August, asking why Austin is still not home and whether anyone is standing in the way of this happening. We may have seen clues about this in former National Security Advisor John Bolton's book, In the Room Where It Happened. In the book, Mr. Bolton alleges that he and Secretary of State Pompeo were able to distract the president, who has wanted to have talks with the Syrians to obtain the release of Austin Tice and other hostages. Bolton says in the book that he and Secretary Pompeo found the president's constant desire to call Assad on U.S. hostages undesirable. John Bolton, by the way, will be here at the National Press Club on August 18th. We're looking forward to talking with him and asking him why. When John Bolton left office last year, he was replaced by then U.S. Special Envoy for Hostage Affairs Robert O'Brien, who spoke publicly for the first time about it here at the National Press Club and made headlines when he stated that the government had every reason to believe that Austin is alive. Today, on behalf of the entire press freedom community and the Tice family, we call on Secretary of State Pompeo and everyone in the administration to bring Austin home. We're all living in the midst of a deadly global pandemic. It's affecting every aspect of our lives. At the same time, we're grappling with a historic outcry for racial equality and social justice. There is a lot on our minds these days. And we're here today on the 8th anniversary of Austin Tice's captivity to remind everyone that he and his family are not forgotten and that his freedom remains a top priority for all of us. To that end, we are today unveiling the Freedom Clock, a 24/7 digital reminder to all who visit the National Press Club that Austin Tice is still being held and he needs our help. And we'll let Austin himself stop this clock in person when he arrives here safely. Mark and Deborah Tice need no clock. They feel every second of their son's absence, and August 14th is an extremely difficult day for them. They have agreed to join us today virtually from their home in Houston, Texas, to say a few words. So please join me in welcoming Mark and Deborah Tice.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. And thanks to everyone that's joined virtually, that's in the room at the press club, and all the people that have been so faithful and persistent in supporting us and supporting Austin. We couldn't have made it this far without their support and prayers.
That's the main thing that we want to say today is that everything that the press club has done just in the past year has really raised hope for Austin to come home. And the fact that we had such a tremendous outcome from the storming of the Hill in the short amount of time that we did it is amazingly huge and especially important in an election year. Thank you very much. We'll be reminding those congressmen and senators that they've taken this on. And as far as what's going on now, we really feel that what Bolton wrote in his book is pretty much still the status. And we're really working to push through that obstacle. That's a big boulder for a little mom and pop to be taking on. And we appreciate having the press club behind us. So just keep pushing. We got to roll that thing out of the way.
Yeah, and I guess I would also note, following up on what Mike said, that this morning, President Trump tweeted his support, issued a statement. In that statement, he called once again asked for the help of Syrian President Assad. We know that President Trump is absolutely committed to bringing Austin home. And we are very grateful for that. And it's in no small part because of all the support that we've received from everyone around this country and around the world.
Right. But we don't really believe this is a head of state issue. And we had an invitation from Syria 8 months ago, which is 8 out of 9 months that it would take to make a human. And so we're still working to get the appropriate people in our government to respond to that invitation. 8 months we've been waiting.
We're also really grateful for this idea and now the realization of the clock, the countdown clock. And Mike, like you said, we can't wait for it to stop ticking.
That's right.
And we want Austin to be the one that flips the switch and shuts that thing off. Yeah. So thank you so much. That will be such a fantastic reminder to everyone that walks into the press club. And I think I saw a note that you guys have something like 250,000 visitors a year at the press club. Well, we don't want to let a year go by to get all those people to walk by it, but everyone that does will be reminded that one of their colleagues is still captive and still needs all of our efforts to bring him home. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great. It's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah and Mark. Our thanks also to the press freedom community, including Reporters Without Borders, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, PEN America, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and other organizations that are involved. We need them all in this continuing effort. We can't do it without them. Sometimes it's hard to know in a case like this how best to be helpful. To that end, the Tices have asked Yegi Rizayan, a National Press Club member who knows what it's like to be held prisoner as a journalist and also what it's like to lead a family effort to get a journalist out of prison, to speak with us for a few minutes about what families need at times like this and how we all can help. Yegi's on staff at the Committee to Protect Journalists, working on advocacy and on the Middle East desk. We're grateful that she could join us today. Yegi?
Thank you so much, Mike, for including me today at this event. I hope my voice is coming through. I'm here today as a representative of the Committee to Protect Journalists to express our organization's solidarity with the Tice family and reaffirm our organization's support for all efforts to bring Austin home very soon safely. But more than that, I'm here today as a friend of Tice's family and as someone who knows and has been through a similar experience. As hostage families, we share a unique bond, and it means a great deal to me today that they have included me to this event, which marks a heartbreaking, but also a very, very critical milestone. I first became familiar with Austin's story because my husband Jason joined Washington Post. And it was around the same time that Austin was abducted in Syria. His ongoing detention was and still is a very great source of anguish for his colleagues everywhere in the world, but particularly at the Post. I want to acknowledge that the Washington Post's publisher, Fred Ryan, is one of the world's committed and honorable advocates for press freedom. Earlier this week, Fred published an op-ed calling on President Trump to do whatever he can to bring Austin home. And today, Washington Post also published an ad with Austin Tice, details of his case and Austin's photo. I urge everyone to go back and read the op-ed if they haven't done so, and also use that ad for doing a social media storm to demand Austin's freedom more and more, particularly today. Jason and I followed every development in Austin's case as closely as possible we could from Tehran until we ourselves were taken hostage. And at this point, I can say it was a harrowing experience for us and for our families. But unfortunately, what we went through was a very small fraction of what the Tice family is going through. And they continue to endure. Austin had been held for 2 years when Jason and I were arrested, and we have now been freed for 5 years. So this grave injustice has to stop right now. And again, I want to implore the US government to do whatever they can and even beyond to bring Austin home to his loving family. I'm hopeful for the day very soon when Deborah and Mark and their children and their grandchildren all welcome Austin home and he comes to the press club, and we all witness him stopping that clock. In the meantime, it's on us, on the families who have been through the similar experience, to come together and never even for a moment forget what Mark and Deborah are going through. We may not be able to do much on daily basis, but the support is everything this family needs. They need to be heard every second of every day. Just let's come together and support them as much as possible until that day that Austin comes home very soon and they begin a much happier chapter in their family journey. Thank you so much for including me.
Thank you so much, Yegi, for those very good suggestions and your kind words. I'd like to go back to something Yegi was talking about, which was the Washington Post and what they've been doing this week in their efforts to support Austin. As Yegi mentioned, Fred Ryan, the publisher of the Post, penned a very powerful op-ed which appeared online Monday night and led to visibility and discussions on television and on other media throughout the day on Tuesday. Press freedom groups amplified it, and we have hard copies here for those who have joined us in person if you've not seen it yet. The Post followed up by announcing a new commitment to advertising for Austin. The Post will run print and digital ads in a campaign-style schedule every month now until Austin is released. This is a significant commitment on the part of the Washington Post. We thank them. We thank them especially as a proud partner of the Washington Post Press Freedom Partnership. We're also working with Austin's siblings, Naomi, Jacob, and Megan, on a new night out effort for this fall. They've come up with a smart and safe idea in the current environment of working with celebrity chefs in key markets around the country to show people online how to prepare fine food while having a conversation about Austin's situation with a Tice family member or with a journalist. This project is now already underway. We expect it will take place in several key markets, including Houston, Seattle, and Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. This is the kind of creative and community-based approach that will introduce Austin to more audiences and keep him top of mind with people across the country. And it's something we can all do together to stay focused on Austin Tice and the need to bring this young man home. Before we conclude today, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence and reflection. Let's take this time together to think about Austin, to envision his safe return, his reunion with his family, and what each of us can do to make that vision a reality. Thank you. I want to thank all of you who have joined us here today, in person and online, starting with Austin's family, also to Yegi Rizayan, the outstanding team at McClatchy, led by Craig Foreman, the board members of the National Press Club and the National Press Club Journalism Institute, the terrific team from the Committee to Protect Journalists who attended online, all of our press freedom groups, all of the journalists who have joined us via webcast and in person, people in the government who are listening today, and the members of the general public who are showing that they care. I'd like to also offer my special thanks personally and professionally to National Press Club Executive Director Bill McCarran for his numerous and unwavering efforts to bring Austin Tice home. To National Press Club Journalism Institute Executive Director Julie Moose, to our producer today, Lindsay Underwood, to our wonderful team, in the National Press Club Broadcast Operations Center, our other staff members here at the National Press Club. We thank everyone. Together, we can and will bring Austin Tice home. May it be soon. Be safe, be well, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All of our thanks join with yours, Mike.